Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today we have Dr. Velma Bagby, and we're going to be talking about The Catch No One Wants and The Homework Basket. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome, everybody.
Now tell us a little about you and being an author.
Well, I started my author journey in 2018 with my very first book. And since then, recently released book 13 and 14. But I began the journey being encouraged by my daughters to write the book. They felt like the topic on dating and marriage and relationships, especially from a Christian point of view, was important. And during our conversations, they learned a lot about it and felt that I needed to write. And even though I took a pause and wrote a few other books, one was Christian fiction, one was a Christian nonfiction, and then I just felt the need to go back to talking about dating and relationships, which is why I released the recent book.
Okay. Now, what is your latest release, The Catch No One Wants?
The Catch No One Wants is my first Christian contemporary fiction, and it follows the life of Veronica Dawson, who's a pastor's kid, a PK, and she's a millennial. She set a goal to be married by 30, and she's now 32 in the story, and she's just been making a lot of dating mistakes, and her father has watched and observed, and he got a little frustrated with how he saw the way in which he saw men mistreating his daughter, and he felt like he needed to step in and do an intervention. So he prays and asks God to help him in determining what he needed to do, and God's answer to him was to use what he knows, which is the fact that he's an expert at fishing. So he decides to take his daughter on a 2-day fishing trip. He creates 5 metaphorical stories or analogies showing how fish personalities and behaviors are similar to men. And he wanted to point out 4 of the fish were the type of men that she's dated in the past. And it was a way for him to really show grace and love to his daughter. He didn't come down with the hammer like, you need to do better, you need to fix it, but he just showed grace and his approach to helping her to see her own mistakes by telling these stories. And so after the fishing trip, he provides her with a wicker basket full of helpful material he wanted her to study to focus on herself. And so that's kind of the gist of the story concerning her and her dad.
Okay. In The Catch, you talk about fish. Can you tell us the fish and their similarities to men?
Yeah, there's the 4 that represented the type of guys that she dated that were the wrong choices in men were the catfish, who lives around garbage and eats garbage. That's where he lives. He loves, that's his home. There was this sturgeon who likes to nibble. We also call the grab and go. There's the salmon who does not like to get caught, and he will break a fish line trying to get away. And he's also sneaky as well. And then there's the pufferfish, who has been described as the type of fish that has human-like eyes, very beautiful to look at, but agitate the pufferfish and you got a different scenario because he's dangerous and poisonous at that point. And so the 5th fish is the goldfish, and the goldfish you're going to have to discover on your own in the story.
What was the inspiration behind The Catch No One Wants?
It was just the years of having conversations with single women, conducting pre-marriage counseling, because I'm also an ordained minister, partnering with my husband, who's my pastor, in providing pre-marriage counseling, marriage counseling when couples are looking to reset, just watching the pattern over and over and over. There were some problems I saw that had they prepared themselves better, they would not have, or at least they would know how to handle it so they can move through it easily. And also the fact that, I just got a little frustrated with couples who would come for pre-marriage counseling, and it was almost as if they had these problems they expected you to fix before they got married. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, maybe the problem is you've got the wrong person. That these are things you should have fixed a long time ago. And so all of that led me to write this book, to see how I could capture some of these challenges and problems that I've seen over the years, put it into a book, build it around the stories of the fish and their analogy and the fish analogies with men. And hopefully women would begin to see either see someone in the stories, see themselves in the stories, and walk away with some benefit from it. And so far, it's doing what I set out for it to do. Women are responding that they can't believe the stories about the fish.
Mhm, mhm. So what do you want readers to take away from this novel?
I think my approach was to take the kind of approach that Jesus had whenever he told a story. He told the parables, over 50 of them, but he was always speaking to an individual or a group of people that had an issue or a problem, rather than come at them with, you need to stop doing this, this is not correct, this is sin. He didn't come down with the hammer, but he, through grace and love, like the father in the story, he told stories that were using items that were familiar with the person, built it around a story, and then allowed the person to put themselves in the place of whatever he used in the story. So then they can walk away either fixing or resolving what Jesus pointed out to them in the story. So underneath it, it was always something profound in his stories. And so in this book, that was my goal, to write a great story, to mimic the storytelling that Jesus used, but also make it engaging. And then underneath it, hopefully people will find those nuggets and take away from the stories what they needed to take away from them.
Okay. Now you wrote a study guide to the novel, The Homework Basket. What was your purpose in writing the study guide?
Being an ordained minister and someone who taught in theology school, a Bible teacher, Sunday school, that was my home. That's what I'm prepared to do, is to get into the word, break it down so students can receive and understand what God was saying. Well, that part of me kept showing up as I was writing. So thankfully, I had an editor who showed me grace and just politely said, well, we need to take that out. That's kind of moving towards or leaning towards nonfiction. So having to do that, as I began to extract more and more out of the novel, I just was saying, Lord, what do I do with all of this? How do I present this to people who might want this? What if people asked about the homework basket and what was in there? And that's when the homework basket came to mind, to present a separate book that was nonfiction and capture all of those things I had to remove, all of the things that were in the homework basket, and so that I can share it with those who really want that. Included in that are the questions surrounding each of the stories so that it can be used as a discussion guide and that sort of thing. So that was the reason for the second book, The Homework Basket.
Okay, on page 17, you talk about your worth, your value, your worth far above rubies. And you say that a man can tell how you feel about yourself, and you can see what's in a woman's heart, her self-worth. Now, how can a man tell when a woman can't see her own worth?
Yeah, which is in the stories, we show several of the men who were the wrong choices, who picked up right away on the women that were interested in them. They knew right away what type of women they were. And there's the behavior of the woman, there's how she acts, there's how she presents herself. They can pick up on some of those insecurities. And the men who prey on women like that, like the catfish who will prey on a woman like that, the sturgeon who were looking for women willing to let him nibble and go, they can pick up on that kind of behavior, that kind of personality, and know that these were great, finds for them. And so the woman doesn't realize that's what's happening. I remember there was a notable Christian singer and speaker who admitted at one point that she had to stop and pay attention to the fact that she kept attracting these men who were nothing like what she wanted and what she needed. And she realized, wait a minute, let me go back and check my heart. If these are the kind of men that's being drawn to me, there's something about me that's making that happen. And so in scripture, God says that we shall be known by our fruit. And so what fruit you carry in your heart is going to exude outwardly, and it's going to be easy to be picked up on. Notice, I should say, she's going to be easily noticed by a man because that's what they look for. Even the men who are looking for the wife that he wants for himself, he's still looking at, okay, what kind of heart that this person has. And so those men will pick up on that fruit and know exactly what type of woman you are.
Wow. What is the essence of a good heart and a bad heart?
I love that in the book. I'm just going to turn to that page because I break it down. The essence of a good heart, we break down HEART, and the H stands for helpful and holy and honest, and the E, efficient, elegant, excellence. A is affectionate, attractive, appealing. R is radiant, reasonable, resolute, and T is trustworthy. But the opposite of that, to someone who doesn't have the right kind of heart, that H stands for haughty, hypocritical, hostile. The E then now stands for evil, explosive, erratic. The A stands for abrasive, aggressive. And the R stands for rebellious and resentful. And T stands for tainted and untrustworthy. And so totally opposite from what a good heart looks like. But all of that fruit that's in your heart, that's going to be shown on the outside, whether you recognize it or not. How you feel about yourself, your self-worth, how you value, how he approaches you, and your response to that. All of those things, the man can pick up on that. And one of the things my husband, I asked him a lot of questions as I was writing this book, just to get his perspective. And one of the things he confirmed when I asked, is it really true that a man knows the woman he wants to marry the moment he meets her? And he said, it's absolutely true. He said, now he may not admit it right away, and he might still go through the process of getting to know her better, but he does know. And so that's why we have to do our due diligence as women too, to put in the work in ourselves to make sure we're presenting the best version of ourselves, and then using the tools we have been given to make sure we're scrutinizing him too. And so I think that's important.
Okay. How does WAIT apply to the dating process?
Oh, you're in the book, aren't you, Miss Queenie, today? That's in the homework basket. And I'm going to turn to that so I can reference this. It's on page 28. And the weight, I remember having to prepare for a message once. And I had to talk about Isaiah 40:31, they that wait upon the Lord. And I said, and when I studied and looked at that word wait, the word wait does not mean sitting around doing nothing. That word means that you're active and you're moving, you're doing what you've been called to do, you're active in your business, your ministry, serving God and whatever you have been called to do. While you're waiting or while you're moving around and serving him, that is when he shows up. And so it's not sitting around, checking the calendar, checking your watch to see why hasn't he shown up. It's not that. And so the wait broken down in the book, in the homework basket, that W, it means, the wait means waiting on the Lord. And that's important, that while you're waiting, you're not sitting, you're moving, you're active, you're still serving, you're still doing what you've been called to do in your business. And so it's your willingness is the W. The A is making sure you stay active, because as you stay active, you're no longer focused on, is he going to show up today? Is he going to show up tomorrow? Is he going to show up here? And then I is for impatient. Being anxious for nothing is what Philippians tells us, not to be in a hurry for anything, but by prayer and supplication, make our requests known, making sure that God knows what your needs are and what you're asking for, but you keep moving. And then the T is tolerant, which means to relax and accept God's process and his timing. And that's what the wait means.
Okay. Now, SWAT assessment, I know what that means in business, but what does it mean in dating?
It's very similar. I mean, that tool can be used in just about anything. And that's why it came to mind to add it. And Grayson added it in his book to make sure his daughter had it and applied it. It's on page 30. It's amazing to me how some of the tools I used in business as a deputy administrator in state government applies to life as well. So in the SWOT, it stands for, S stands for strength. And basically you just want to understand what are your strengths, what are the things that are the benefits to who you are. And you want to know those things. Are you the good? Are you the virtuous woman? Are you valuable? Have you embraced those attributes God has placed on your life? That's part of your self-worth. Do you realize that you're the crown? Do you realize you're the ruby? These are all your strengths, who God says that you are. And so the woman, it's important for her to understand it and know that and believe it, because that's what she's going to exude out of her heart. W is the weakness. Understand what they are. And your weakness is you cannot fix what you do not know. So prayerfully asking God, help me identify those areas I know I need to have repaired or fixed, or even laying aside a weight that maybe you have picked up along the way and you need to lay it aside. So that can become a weakness for you in your preparation for your husband. So the weakness is to fix if I said you cannot fix what you do not know, which is the truth. So what you are unwilling to accept as the truth, that could be the case as well. So it could be the low opinion of yourself, going back to the self-worth, going back to that S, which should be a strength. Maybe these are weaknesses for you and you don't have the strength that I mentioned. You don't understand and have not embraced that you're a ruby or that you're going to be the crown of his life. So those are all weaknesses, and it's important for you to identify them. Always for opportunity. This is your chance to identify your weakness and create a plan to fix them. So this is your response to what you've identified on your weakness list. Now you're going to develop a plan to make sure you get rid of them, so there aren't any. And then the T is the threats, things that will threaten your progress, whether it's naysayers, people who don't believe you have a husband out there, people who think it's too late. There could be people who are talking down to you, talking against what you believe God can do for you. And so those are all could be threats to your progress. Self-criticism and what you say about it can be a threat too. That stinking thinking could be a threat. Your lack of faith. At some point you can say, well, I'm tired of waiting, meaning you start to sit down, and then that becomes a threat because now you're not believing anymore, because God is a gentleman. He is not going to force himself into any situation in your life. He'll wait for you to invite him in. And the way you invite him in is, God, I believe that you can do this for me. And so that can become a threat. And so you want to make sure you have that in place as well.
Okay. Now, in the novel, Veronica rejects her wise counsel. Who should your wise counsel be and why?
It's important for you to surround yourself, and I mentioned in the threats, those naysayers and people who will talk down about what you believe in God to do. It's important for you to surround yourself with people who believe in this process for you and who will be there to help you vet the person when they come into your life. And so wise counsel can be those who are those gracious spiritual leaders that you might have at church. They can be those friends that you know that are those diehard, will be with you to the end, tell you the truth no matter what kind of friends, still love you no matter what your choices are. They can be a group of those kind of people. Sometimes they're older people. Sometimes what we used to have as a wise counselor used to be the senior members in our family, the aunt, the wise aunt. Sometimes it was mama, sometimes it was big mama, grandma. All of those folks are people and examples of a wise counsel, people who can kind of give you the guidance you need when you have questions along the way. That's a wise counsel.
Okay. Can you tell us about conditions versus qualities and why this is important?
Oh my goodness. Conditions are so important because I find after, like I said, all these years and watching what women do in terms of dating and what they won't do. And you hear it constantly in groups on Facebook. You're watching people say, no, he's too short. No, he's too tall. No, he doesn't walk like I like him to walk. No, I don't like that kind of career. He needs a different kind of job. Those are all conditions. He's too tall. He's too short. He doesn't have enough muscles. Who cares? Because let me tell you, muscles will leave over time. Conditions are those things that will change over time. Whether or not he's tall or short doesn't matter. It's about how he treats you and how much he's going to love you. And so even in the story of Veronica, she calculated a guy that had been around her all her life, but she had these conditions, so she missed out on him. She missed him the whole time until her father had to point him out and open her eyes to those conditions that she had that were closing her eyes to a potential mate. And that's exactly what women do now. So I added it in the book so women can stop it. Conditions such as he has to have an office in the church. Who said that? Why does he have to be a pastor, a minister, a deacon? Why does he have to be someone in that kind of office? He has to have, he has to be tall, or he cannot be short, or his physical build have to be a certain way. He has to work out regularly. He has to be athletic. Who came up with this list? Some people say he has to be skinny. He can't be heavy. He can't, well, I'm not skinny. So why am I expecting him to be a certain size? Or he has to have a certain type of hair color, certain type of eye color. I mean, we get ridiculous with the list and you wonder why you haven't met him yet. So conditions can cause you to miss out on who God has for you, because you have to remember, God has a list too. He knows exactly who the right mate will be for you so that he matches exactly what you need. But when you come up with these conditions on the list, you are ignoring or even eliminate those potential contenders.
Yes.
So those are conditions. Positive attributes are the real things you should be looking for.
Okay. Where did we as women go wrong with dating?
Some of the things we just talked about, Miss Queenie, we're just awful out there. First of all, we're practicing a process that's only a couple of 100 years old. And the younger the person is, the worse they are in terms of dating. Maybe, because I have also met some women in our age bracket that are doing a horrible job as well. We are just too open. We, like you and I were talking offline about the workers around your aunt's house. We invite people in to our personal space too soon. We don't apply the right kind of strategy in terms of asking questions over the phone when we first start those initial conversations. Why do we have to meet the person right away? We don't have to meet in person right away. There may be some groundwork you want to establish before you even make it to that point. If you ask the very first question, what's your intent in dating me? And he struggles with that answer, then he may not be the right one to even meet in person. So you can save yourself a lot of headache and a lot of time if we apply the right strategy, ask the right questions very early on. Because either you're dating to be married or you're just dating for a social event. So you have to make up your mind, what is your purpose in dating in the first place? Because there is no reason, like Miss Ellen's daughter's video said, the girl had been not only dating the guy, but fixing him a dinner, living with him and everything else for 10 years.
Yep.
That's a catfish right there. That's a salmon right there, who is uncommitted and still looking. Just because he's in your house and living with you doesn't mean he's still not looking, because he's not committed to you. It does not take 10 years. We use the 40-day rule in the book. He's got 40 days to declare what his intent is.
Yep. Yep. And from what you have seen, when did dating become entertainment?
I think the marriage has been on a sliding scale since, based on the research that I did, since the 1960s. We entered the hippie era, and we had people who would rather shack up or cohabitate than to get married. That was the going trend back then. Mm-hmm. And we just have never gone back. And the other problem we have, God has provided all these tips and these tools and these keys to his people. And yet within the church structure, we are not applying it. We're not talking about it. We're not teaching it. So the light upon this process has slowly dimmed over the years because churches are not carrying the torch. They're not teaching, they're not training. And so therein lies the problem. You don't know what you don't know until somebody tells you. That lack of wisdom is missing among our young people, helping younger generation, including our own age bracket. When I was talking about dating and marriage, when I had Dr. Velma Talks every Tuesday on my business page on Facebook, I looked at the insight data, and it gave me the age of the people that were following me. And they were between the age of 21 to 50, 55, I believe it was, close to 60. So that told me that this was conversations that we need to bring back to the table again. When I wrote the first book, I started putting excerpts of my first book, which talked about my 70s, not the first book, I'm sorry, my 70s love story, when I talked about when my husband and I met in high school. I wasn't looking for a husband in high school. We just happened to meet in high school. But when I started posting excerpts from it, the biggest crowd that was following me for that book were high schoolers. That tells me that they're not being spoken to, and this information is not being shared with them either. So it's the gamut. That's all I can say. It's just everybody needs to hear.
So what are you working on right now?
I'm working on finalizing my fish stories. One of the things that a lot of readers have asked is they'd like to have more fish analogies. And I have 4 that I'm working on now, and I hope to release them real soon. They're called the trophies. That's your insight. They're called the trophies.
The trophies?
The trophies, like you win an award, they're called the trophies.
So this is women.
These are the men.
Still the men.
More fish stories. Remember the fish stories.
Okay.
I'm also at the same time working on a release for next year, which is going to address the women who are the issues and how men miscalculate sometimes too. They make mistakes too and marry the wrong one, the wrong type, because they're looking for one thing only, and forget about all the other attributes a woman should have when he marries her. That's the women who tear down the house, based on Proverbs 14:1, where it says a wise woman builds the house, but a foolish woman tears it down. So we're going to talk about the fools who are women, and that's the women who tear down the house. That's going to release next year. But for now, I'm going to be working on and finalizing the catfish stories, which is once I'm ready to release it, those stories will be free on my page. I'll establish a landing page to make sure it's set up so that you can get those stories free. After that, I believe I'm going to be working on a workshop so that I can do kind of some intensive things with a group of women who's interested.
And where can we find you and your books?
You can find me. My books are on Amazon. It's on all online bookstores, as well as on my webpage at drvelma.com. So any of those avenues, you can find my books. And I'm on all social media, so you can connect with me in any of the platforms. I'm available as drvelma.com, Dr. Velma Bagby.
Okay. What book events do you have planned for the remainder of this year?
Oh my goodness, I am going to the Black Authors, the Black Authors Matters event in Houston in October, the Christian Lovers Retreat in October as well. And that's going to be in North Carolina. And aside from that, I still have a few podcast tours that I'm finishing up on, but those are the 2 events that I have scheduled on my calendar towards the end of the year.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
I just want to say thank you for all of those who are showing their support. Continue to let me know what you feel about the book. I look forward to seeing your comments as you write them after reading the book. And I just say thank you, and I'm looking forward to do more. All
right. Well, thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Miss Queenie, for always having me. You're a gracious host. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, this is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.